This is lesson 3, simple functions in Excel. To begin this lesson, click in cell B3 and type addition. Go down to the next cell and type subtraction. Next, multiplication. Next, division. And finally, order of operations. And these are the things that we're just going to take a quick look at today. So whenever we're working with functions in Excel, we always start with the equal sign. So let's observe something. If I click in the cell where I just wrote the word addition, we see the word addition here in the cell, and we see the word addition here in the function bar. The Excel has understood we have not told it to do anything. If we type in the equal sign and we type in a function, like let's say 4 plus 6. So now we're typing equals 4 plus 6. I haven't clicked enter yet. You can see this appearing both in this cell and in the function bar. As soon as I hit enter, then that changes. Now we have 10, our solution, in the cell, and the formula in the formula bar. So if we made a mistake, we meant to type 4 plus 7, we can go into the formula bar, backspace, and correct it. And now it has that corrected math problem. So one way to do addition is simple plus. So we can do equals 17 plus 15 plus 23. Okay, we can go equals 2.5 plus 5.3 plus 6.8. And so it's pretty handy for us. And we can also do negative numbers. We can go equals -4 plus -6. And if you remember anything about working with negative numbers, if you add a negative to a negative, it's just like adding those two numbers together, but they're going to be on the other side of 0. So there will be a negative sign in front of it, bringing us to the result of -10. If we go equals -4 plus 6, now we're going to subtract the 2, and so we get a +2. And if we go equals 4 plus -6, then we're going to get a -2. So just working with the negative and positive numbers in addition. Then finally, there's a function that we can use for addition. We can type in equals sum. And so now we're telling Excel that we want it to add stuff for us. And it's going to ask us, what do you want us to add? And we type in a parenthesis, and that indicates what we're going to want Excel to add. So whatever we put inside the parentheses with commas in between, it will add. So let's type in 5, 25, 30. You see I put commas between each of them. You can put an ending parenthesis, or you can just hit enter. And now it has calculated that for us. If we click on the cell, we see the answer. And if we click on the formula bar up here, we see what we actually added. And this is a function that we're going to use quite a lot going forward. So you might want to do one more problem. Equals sum. And let's just type in, maybe you can choose some numbers. I'm going to add up my birth year to my daughter's birth year. There we go. 2,161, a silly problem, but just so you had a little practice with that. And it's not 198, it's 1986. All right, so that's how we work with addition. Subtraction, we'll just do a problem or two because it's exactly the same. We type our equal sign indicating a formula, and we can do 8 minus 3, and there's our answer. We can type in equals 275 minus 87. And there's our answer. We can type in equals -99 minus 12. And we get -111. So that's basic subtraction. Multiplication in Excel is done with the asterisk. If you shift down and hit the number 8. So we'll type our equal sign, and let's type equals 4 times 5. You can see what it looks like, and we hit enter and we get 20. We can multiply several numbers, equals 4 times 5 times 0.5. We get 10. And so that's the basics. There's no special function. Let's just do one more multiplication. Equals, and this time maybe do your own problem. Type in the last 2 digits of your cell phone number and the area code. And put in times, multiply. Times, for me, 701. So, and we can see a silly problem. We get 60,286. Let's click in that and say that you don't like that number represented that way. You would like to see the commas that would be there if we wrote it out. So now click in that cell where you multiplied your last 2 digits of your phone number times your area code. And now right click when it's highlighted. And you'll see on here an option to format cells. So click on that option and then click on number. And now you can tell it what you want the numbers to look like. You can click right here, use the comma, use the 1000 separator. I don't want those decimal places. They're just 0. So I'm going to change that to 0. And if you wanted negative numbers to show up as red or something like that, then you could click that too. And so now we can see we've just reformatted, and now we have this comma in there. And so that's a function that you can use. That's especially helpful when you get to working with percents. Division in Excel is done with the slash, the same as I believe on most calculators. So let's do our first division problem. Equals 5 divided by 10. And you can see we got 0.5. And remember, 0.5 is the same as 1/2. And so what we're going to do is right click on this cell, scroll down to format cells. You can pause this video if you're having any difficulty and see if it comes up for you. Do it again if it doesn't, like just happened to me. And then go down to percentage and have 0 decimal places. And so now, instead of showing us 0.5, it's showing us 50%. And sometimes that's just a little easier to think about. So let's just say 50% of 12. Let's go up to our multiplication problem, and let's hit equals 0.5, which is our 50%, times 12, and we get our 6. So keep in mind that 0.5 and 50% are the very same thing, and that if we multiply that 50% times anything, we get half of it. You'll be working with these percents of it in our class. So let's figure out some more percents. We would know that 3 out of 4 is 75%. So let's type equals 3 out of 4, 3 divided by 4, and we get 0.75. If we don't like the way that looks, we can click on the cell that we like the way it looks, hit our little paintbrush up here, which copies the format, and we can click on that cell. And now it changes that to 75%. So there is copying. We could copy the whole cell, or we could just copy the format by clicking this button. Let's do some bigger ones. Let's do 108.875 divided by 4. And you can see what I did wrong. I hope you can see. I did not tell Excel I was doing a formula. I didn't type the equal sign. So let's go ahead and get the equal sign in there. You can see I went up to the formula bar to put that in, and let's hit enter. And now it's done the math for us. Now we have an answer here and the problem up here. So we will be working a little bit with division. But the next thing that's going to be very important for us to work with is order of operations, because this is the source of a lot of mistakes. And so order of operations refers to the sequence in which we should do each operation if we have a long problem. So the natural cycle of order of operations is, I'm going to start with number 2, is first we would do squares. Then we would do multiplication and division. And finally, addition and subtraction. And you'd be saying, in what order? It would be in order that it comes in the problem. Same for addition, subtraction. In addition, in order of occurrence in problem. And so typing things in makes a difference. And so if we type in, for example, we'll do some kind of easy numbers. Let's type in equals 2 plus 4 times 3. And so now the first thing that Excel is going to do is multiply. So it's going to take 4 times 3 and get 12, and then add the 2. And so then we'll get 14. And so you can see that's what's happened. But let's say that's not what we wanted it to do. Let's say that we really wanted it to do 2 plus 4. Let me put this 2 plus 4 times 3. We wanted it to add first. And the magic trump for all of these orders of operations is parentheses. And so it's up to you to know what needs to be done first. Without the parentheses, Excel will make its own decision. And so order of operations, we're going to take, let's take our very same problem. I'm going to copy this instead of writing it over again. So I'm clicking on that cell where it says 14. But what it's going to copy is the formula. So I'm hitting now Control-C, but you could also use your tools up here, or you could right-click and select copy. So whichever way you like to go, I always use my Control-C function. And now let's paste it here. Nothing's changed. It's done exactly the same problem. Let's now type in the parentheses that we were to type in before. And now we're telling it first add 2 plus 4 and then multiply it by 3, which would give us 6 times 3 or 18. Let's see if that's correct. And there we go. So keeping in mind what these order of operations are and knowing that the parentheses make a difference. And I'm going to come back to this row because I didn't talk about squares and I intended to. So we're going to add squares here at the bottom of our list. So squares are any number times itself. So if you think realistically about why it's called squares, it's because let's say we want to know 2 squared. Well, picture it like this. Here are 2. We want to make a square out of them. What do we need to make a square? We need 2 more. So the square is 2 times 2. Let's say we have 3. What do we need to make a square? Well, we're going to have 3 by 3. And then we get 9 squares. So just so you know where that's coming from, I always find it helpful to think about things that way. And so how are we going to do squares in Excel? We can do it a couple of ways. We can just simply do equals 2, put our times sign 2. Perfectly good way. Or we could say equals 2, and then we could use the little up asterisk. So let me write these down. We could go equals 2 times 2 using our asterisk, or we could go equals 2 squared. And that little asterisk is the uppercase of the 6 key. So let's try that. Equals 2. Hit that little caret, above the 6 key, and then we'll hit the 2, telling it we want it to square, and we get the same answer. Let's try again with another easy one. Equals 4 times 4, which we know we should get 16. And let's try the square function. Equals 4 squared. Now that might seem like what difference does it make? But imagine now that we're going to take the square of this big long number that I'm just going to type. And so let's type equals 1.29765.8. You just type a whole bunch of numbers. Now, if I have to type all that again, that's a real pain. So it's much easier to just type this caret and the 2, and then Excel will square this for us. So that's how we do our square function. And remember, if we're working in Excel, so going back to our order of operations row, let's go to our next cell, E7, and let's add a square function to the problem we were doing previously. So I'm going to copy this problem again. Actually, I'm going to copy this very first one with no parentheses. And let's see what happens now if we just add a square here. First, let's predict there is square. I'm taking the very same problem and I'm just adding that square function. So see what comes first is the square. So it's first going to square the 3, so 9. Then it's going to multiply the 4 times 9. We get our 36. Then it's going to add the 2. So this is our order of operations. So let's see if we get that. And we get 38, excuse me, as the outcome. And so now let's do the same problem. Let's put some parentheses in. Let's imagine that we don't want it to take that square. So let's put the parentheses around 4 times 3. Let's imagine that we want Excel to take the 12, square it, and then add the 2. So the 12 squared, 144, 146 we might get here. All right. And so that is just an indication to you of how important it is to remember parentheses. So you've seen a little bit here. You've learned how to add, and you learned how to use the sum function right here somewhere. Here's our sum function. Very important. You've learned how to subtract. We talked a little bit about negative and positive. You've learned multiplication. We showed you how to format cells by right-clicking. And I'll remind you of one more thing. Look what happens. Let's take equals -4 times -4. And think about whether you're going to get a negative number or a positive number. And you can see it's positive. You know, 4 times 4 is going to be positive. And so now let's take equals -4 times 4. And you'll see here is where we get the negative number. So the rule of thumb that you can remember is 2, I'll write a line here, positives, 2 positive numbers multiplied equals positive. I'm going to write in brief now, 2 negative equals positive, and 1 neg times 1 pos equals negative. So the only way you get a negative answer in a multiplication problem is if you have a positive number and a negative number that you're multiplying together. So you have learned one more summary. You learned the sum function. You learned the square function. And let's look at one more function, which is the square root. The square root you almost always have to calculate. It's very challenging to do anything like this in your head unless it's one of the square numbers that come out even. So let's start with one that comes out even. So we want to know the square root of 36. The only way to do it is to know the abbreviation SQRT. And so let's take the square root of 36. And we get 6. Now, the abbreviation for square root, similar to sum, it's just SQRT. And you put the number in here. And so let's do another one. Equals SQRT. Let's do 127 and hit enter. And you can see that this is a lot more complex. And so you might know this one already, but this one you wouldn't know. And so we do have to remember our square root function. But if you happen to forget your square root function, remember you have this helper. So you can click on this function square. You see it types the equal sign for you. And we can, type in root, square root, but it's already here on the top anyhow. And so if we click on this and click OK, then it just asks us what number. Let's take 165 and hit OK, and it will produce the answer to this and drop it into that cell. Not sure why it's being a little sluggish right now, but that's the last function that we're working with. Yeah, it's being a little sluggish. There we go. And so you see it just typed the formula for us. So that was the last lesson that we were working with today. And so I hope this was helpful.